So today's practice will be a balanced yin and yang practice. A portion of the beginning of the class will be yin postures, and the second part will be more active postures. So let's begin in our centering position in a comfortably cross-legged pose, Sukhasana. And I'll ring the bell 3 times. That will help us with centering. So close your eyes and begin to look downwards and inward into the body. Cultivating a deep breath by pressing the breath out of the pelvic floor, down through the pelvic floor, and letting the next inhalation arise naturally. Inwardly line up the crown of your head over the pelvic floor. Hands are comfortably resting on your thighs. With each breath, you elongate the spine, lift and spread your collarbones wide, building broadness into the upper armpit chest area. Relax the front of your throat. Release the lower hinge of the jaw. Feel the skin of the face soften around the eyes, the nose, the ears. The temples become hollow and cool. And now bringing your hands in front of your chest into Namaskarasana at the heart center. Let's begin our practice with 3 ohms to set the tone and the intention for today's practice. So beginning with a cleansing breath, in and out. Breathe in. Now bowing your head down towards your heart, take a moment this morning. Dedicate your practice to something greater than yourself, cultivating an ideal, a samkalpa. And acknowledging the teacher within. And then slowly lift your head, place your hands down on your thighs, and open your eyes. So we're going to begin with a yin practice, focusing on the kidney and bladder meridian, which is a very foundational yin practice and very familiar. So let's begin with butterfly pose. And so you know how to get into butterfly pose. I'll just show you the initial pose. I need to modify it. So you're going to have your sit bones raised up on a blanket so that your pelvis can tilt forward. Now this is the full butterfly position. Hopefully your ankles are going to be resting on the blanket. And we know how to initiate the pose from here. So you'll be coming forward with the upper part of the body to move to your edge. I'm going to demonstrate today a modification for this that will be more appropriate for me, which is lying on my back, a back lying, reclined butterfly pose, which is another way to do this. And I think this will be a little bit better for you might want to practice trying this because it's some variation. It's basically Supta Baddha Konasana on your back. So butterfly on the back. Just be sure that you don't try to bring your heels too close to the perineum. You make that nice big square. And you can support the outer legs with blocks if you so desire. So our first yin position, get into position, and then I'm going to turn off my voice after we're settled. If you're lying on your back, place your hands on your abdomen, support the outer legs as necessary with blankets, and make sure your head is resting on a pillow blanket and that your head is comfortable. Settling and focusing on the breath now. The breathing becomes the center of awareness. And as you pulsate with pressing the breath out through the pelvic floor and letting the next breath arise inwardly to expand the inner body and move up and outward through your chest, become aware of the area right behind your navel. This is what's called the prana body, the energy body, which resides with its center right behind the navel. So focus your awareness and your breath in that center. And try to keep that focus throughout the rest of the yin practice. Be here for another minute and a half. And if you've had enough at any time, come out of the pose. And you can extend your legs straight into a relaxed Dandasana. Last 5 breaths. At the end of the next breath, slowly extricate yourself from the pose by bringing your legs together, stretching the legs straight out in front of you. And let's do that little cleansing back bend, like to do pose between poses, arching your back up, look up at the ceiling, and just extending your legs in front of you. Sort of a nice cleansing of the palate, that pose. So now we're going to move into Sphinx pose. So coming onto your belly, set up your blankets in such a way that your hips will be comfortably supported. And the top of the body has a little bit of traction on the mat. Your elbows and your hands can be on the mat. Set yourself up carefully, making sure that your elbows are stacked directly below the shoulder. Or if you find this back bend to be a little too intense, the way to adjust it is to slide your elbow forward. By sliding the elbows forward, you release the angle and it's not so acute. So that's a way to modify. Don't bring your elbows back. Don't bring your elbows back behind your chest, because that's going to make too much stress in the biceps. You want to relax the muscles. Middle fingers tracking forward. Two possible hand positions. This is the first with the parallel arms. The second would be in prayer mudra, namaskarasana, with the palms together and the thumbs folded across each other. Once you're in position, roll your hips back and forth a couple times. Let your feet become comfortably separated. And then to consciously relax the lower body, clench the buttocks muscles, clench all the muscles in the legs, all the way to calves, down to the feet. Take a deep inhalation, and then on the exhalation, release all those muscles. And that should give you a little bit of space and relief in the lower back. Your gaze should be down towards your lower eyelid or down to the floor. Trying not to let your neck hang, keeping the neck neutral. Breathing into the chest. And as you begin to focus on the breath, because you've settled into the pose, you can optionally practice a kumbhaka, a breath retention. So the general rule is that on the back bends, we retain the breath at the top of the inhalation. And on forward bends, you would hold the breath on the end of an exhalation. So in that spirit, if you wish to, you can inhale fully and then hold the breath for a couple of counts. And then release it and return to normal, gentle ujjayi breathing. Keeping the audible breath going helps with the focus. And the gentle audible breath will help you to expand and lengthen that breath. And after a couple of cycles, you can practice the kumbhaka. The retention should be done, held, and once you've released it, let the breath return to its normal cadence and let a couple of breath cycles pass before you practice the next kumbhaka. If you practice kumbhaka regularly, you can shorten the intervals between the retentions, but try to use your intuition to see what feels right for you. The breath retention takes us into the space of eternity because it takes us out of the breath cycle. And it allows you to experience the pose in a different way. Remember to keep that creeping tension from creeping into the lower body by occasionally tensing up the lower body, inhaling and exhaling with a nice long release so that you can release that tension which builds. Now from Sphinx, you can stay in Sphinx or you can transition into seal pose. To do that, you're going to take your hands to the mat and press your elbows straight, lifting up the entire chest. This will give a really deep stretch to the front body and more compression in the spine in a different location. So once again, the muscles are going to tend to grip here. So try griptioning all the muscles, grip them and hold them for a breath or two until you are sure everything's tensed up. Inhale, and with a deep exhalation, let go of the muscles in the lower body. See if you can get some relaxation there. If it doesn't happen the first time, do it again. Or you can stay in Sphinx pose. And if you've had enough, you've had enough. I want you to come back down to Sphinx. Or at any time, bring the elbows down across your elbows and rest your head upon your stacked hands or wrists. Keep the neck neutral. Keep the gaze quiet. Keep the breath long with a gentle sounding of the Ujjayi breath technique. Don't overstay your welcome. If you've had enough, you've had enough. So coming back down to Sphinx if you wish. So let's all return to Sphinx and we'll transition. Transitioning by crossing your arms, placing your forehead on your stacked hands to let the spine go. Releasing from the back bend. It can be a nice stretch for the neck if you like to rest your alternate cheeks on your hands, turning with your left cheek on your hand. Stretching the neck out. Allowing the weight of your head to create that traction, that deep stretch in the neck. Not overstaying your welcome, but turning your cheek to the other side if you wish, or keeping your forehead neutral on your hands. Few more breaths here. Now from here, we're going to transition into child pose. So press yourself up to your knees, carefully and slowly, and then I want you to take a block or a blanket or both, a bolster, to rest your forehead upon. Because we're transitioning from the back bend, we want to take a gentle child pose. So it might be too severe to get your head right to the floor. And it's very nice to rest on something. So whatever you do, be sure your head is resting on a prop on the floor. And then enjoy the counter pose, the lower back opening up, breathing and pulsing into the organs, and feeling the back body opening, surrendering, and relaxing after the tension of a back bend. And we're going to stay here comfortably for a couple of minutes. Child pose is always a nice pose to tune in with the breath, to tune into the body, to go inward, to begin your inquiry inward. Notice the quality of your breath. Notice if there's any strong sensations anywhere. Where are they? In the lower back? In the quadriceps? In the knees? In the shoulders? Are your arms uncomfortable? Make sure to adjust the pose if you're feeling any nagging sensations that aren't comfortable, that aren't, well, not comfortable. Sensations are important. Tune into the sensation. And if you breathe into it and find you can't get it to release, then make a micro adjustment of your limbs. If you begin to feel claustrophobic, you can raise your forehead a little higher on a higher prop. We're in our final 30 seconds. So at the end of the next breath, press yourself slowly back up to seated, up to vertical, and set up a blanket for dragonfly pose. And we're not going to be doing the spread leg wide version. We're just going to be doing head to knee pose, basically modified for yin practice. So just being sure that you've got your sit bones slightly raised up. And if you have tight hamstrings, to have another blanket ready to roll up as a bolster that you can place under your knees if you need this. I found this is really helpful as I have some hamstring tendonitis. And so this is a nice modification. And there's another modification I'll show you too. But for our purposes, just with your legs forward in front of you, be sure your sit bones are supported and your sit bones you're slightly raised so that you can ground the leg bones. The tops of the leg bones are grounded nicely. Let's begin by taking a hold of behind your left knee, draw the heel up to your groin and let the knee drop out to the side. And again, if it can't reach the floor, prop the knee up. Make sure it's grounded on either a blanket or a block, preferably a blanket. A blanket's a little bit more of a soft place for the knee to land so that you can release. So your foot is in the inner thigh of the opposite leg. The opposite leg is just coming out in front of you. And then you're going to begin to come forward over the standing leg. Take your time with this. And again, if you need to release the hamstring, there's a couple of options. You can place your hands under there, hold your knee in a micro bent position, or if you would like to also, you can bend your knee and place the foot upon the floor. This is another modification. And begin to come forward in a forward bend over that leg. Tune into where you're feeling sensations, probably in the outer left hip, very possibly in the lower back. Breathe into those places where you feel sensation. Keep your neck neutral as possible. The upper body is going to curve over and relax over that leg. That's okay if the upper body is sort of coming into a curve, but do try to keep your neck a little as neutral as long as possible so your head's not hanging. You could also use a blanket or prop to rest your head if you'd like to. Another option is to take a prop and place it on your leg and allow the upper body to rest on the pillow or blanket. Just explaining some modifications for you as you go along if you need this. This forward bend stimulates the kidney area in the lower back. The stretching sensation stimulates the meridian, the urinary bladder meridian also. And the kidneys are an important center of vitality in the body. So doing a basic yin practice where you're stimulating the kidney meridian is a very nice place to start practice. So let's transition sides now. So taking your outer left knee, extend your legs straight forward, and you can come into that little cleansing back bend if you like. Take a breath. Open the chest up to the ceiling, let your head drop back, and just enjoy the re-expansion of the front of the body, which may have gotten constricted a little bit in the forward bend. You're supposed to try to keep your front body somewhat open though, and not constricted in the forward bend. Take your props, whatever you need, to your other side if you need them, or underneath your knees if you need them, and take a hold behind your right leg, your right knee. Draw the right heel in to the groin, placing the sole of the foot on the inner thigh of your left leg. Let the leg drop out, your knee drop to the side. Again, if it's not reaching the floor, then prop it with a block or a blanket, preferably blanket. You can also microbend the extended leg knee if your hamstrings are overextended or if they're feeling peckish. Just be sure you've got a bolster underneath your extended leg knee. Take a nice deep breath, and as you inhale and hinging from the hips, begin to come forward with your hands left and right of the ankle or foot. Come to your first sweet edge of discomfort, feeling a strong sensation in the outer right hip, no doubt, feeling a strong sensation possibly in the lower back. Breathe into those places where you're feeling sensation. If you're not feeling any sensation at all, You may need to let yourself move forward a little further into a place of a little bit more tension. So if you're really finding this very easy, well, you can move forward into the forward bend. And that is at some point you're going to find you can walk your hands forward towards your feet. You might find that increases the intensity of the posture. Find a place where you have increased intensity, then move back to the breath and settle there. So we're giving a deep stretch to those ligaments, those tendons, and rotating the bones and the sockets. And there's compression in the forward bend, the front of the body contacting the thigh, flexion, deep flexion in the hip. There's a lot going on in these poses. So learn to scan your awareness to those different places of feeling compression or traction. And keep the breath moving fully in the front body. That is important at all times, especially in the forward bends where there might be some compression of the front body. You want to try to keep it open and moving, which means if you have to come up a little bit back out of the pose, do so to free the chest to breathe. Ujjayi breath. Notice the area behind the navel, the prana body. Is there a sense of feeling of balance between the upper body and the lower body, receiving a circulation of breath? That's a good place to check. The area behind the navel is a power center in the body. The middle chakra, the solar plexus, powerful place. And bringing your awareness to that area is a very nice practice to do when you're doing yin postures, whenever possible. So now let's walk our way out of this pose. Walking yourself back up to vertical, take a hold of your bent knee, leg, and extend that leg straight out in front of you. You can shake them out a little bit. Come into that little cleansing posture, the back bend, lifting your head, eyes to the ceiling, and feel that counter pose in action. So now we're going to do, I want to transition us into the more active practice. And we'll start by activating the core. So I want you to sit in Dandasana. You're already in Dandasana, but let's begin to activate the core and move this into the active practice by lifting your arms up into Urdhva Hastasana. Lift the arms up, bringing the palms to face each other, rolling the upper arms into near the ears. Your feet are half flexed, so your toes are pointing back towards your face, but you're also pressing into the balls of the feet. So there's a half flex situation there, the gas pedal effect. Breathing, activating. You should feel the core starting to wake up. And then release your arms down by your sides. Let's take a seated twist. So I'm going to try to get a little bit of everything, at least one of everything into this practice. So let's start by bending your left knee. And let's take the foot over the opposite side of to the outer side of your right leg. Plant the foot down on the floor and hug your knee into your chest. Your other leg is straight out. And again, if you have any hamstring issues, you can take a blanket underneath the knee. You can also come in. Well, let's try coming into the full pose. I'm going to ask you to come into the twist at this point, but if you would like to take the full, well, more of it's similar, it's closer to the full pose. You can bend your other knee and draw your right heel underneath your left sit bone. Make sure though that your sit bones are level. So once you come into this pose, sit up nice and tall and be sure that your pelvis feels level. Once that's achieved, you can wrap your right arm around your knee and you can take a bind or take your left hand to the floor behind you, whichever way you would like to approach the twist. I like to do a bind. I find I like to balance on my sit bones and I like to take my hands and bind them with each other, interlacing my fingers or taking the opposite wrist with, take your left hand to your right opposite wrist and holding there. So try, experiment with the seated twist, and then begin to turn. Breathing into the prana body, breathing into that navel center. On your exhalations, begin to deepen the twist. And on your inhalations, lifting up tall through the crown of the head, exhaling, softening. Soften your eyes, your nose, your throat. Soften all of the skin on your face. Let your eyelids drop and try to become calm and contemplative here. Breathing. And let's release this side. Coming back to center, unwinding, release your legs to Dandasana again in front of you. Take that cleansing pose, reach behind you, lift your chest. And then coming up, take a hold behind your right knee and cross the right foot over to the opposite side on the outside of your left leg. Wrap well, first of all, just draw the knee into the chest. And this may be where you're going to initiate your twist. If you want to come into the full pose, you'll bend that lower leg, you'll bend the left leg, and try to take the heel underneath that right sit bone, and then level your hips. Do take the time to level your hips, lift your chest, broaden the front body by pulling your knee in close to your chest. And that will help you to level your sit bones, send the awareness down to the where you're sitting and how level you are. Once you feel that you've reached a level position, take your left arm and wrap it around your right knee. And you can take your bind or you can take your hand to the floor behind you, pressing down and beginning to initiate your twist. Let the twist begin from the navel. So breathing, exhaling fully into the pelvic floor, locate the navel, breathe into that area, that prana body, breathe into that space, and begin to twist from the foundation of the spine. And with each breath, let the twist move up a little bit higher into the thoracic spine, up between the shoulder blades, and the final piece being the cervical spine. But that's the cherry on top. So don't worry so much about where you're looking. It's better to look forward, straight ahead, rather than worrying about turning to the right with your head. So keep this nice pulsation going with the breath. So every time you exhale, you're going to come a little deeper in the twist. Inhalation is going to expand and raise the crown of the head towards the ceiling. Exhalation, relaxing. So feel the active and passive aspect of this pose. And once you're here for a few breaths, you can let go and relax your face, relax your eyes, and just breathe. Now let's release out of that. We don't want to stay there too long. It's a pretty intense pose. Coming back to center, extend your legs out one more time. Take that breath, breathing up, looking at the ceiling, bending your back, enjoying that nice back bend. And then let's come onto our hands and knees for cat and cow pose. Nice familiar friend to get the spine moving a little bit more. Warming up. So your hands and knees, making sure your knees are stacked right below your hips and that your wrists, elbows, and shoulders are in alignment. Your fingers spread nice and wide. Nice stable table position. Then let's initiate our cat-cow. So let the heart drop down, come into cow pose, your back bend position first. Breathe a couple times here. Move back and forth. You can feel free to explore by doing somewhere a half barrel roll. Let the chest move back and forth. Explore this pose. Micro bend your elbows. Let your body come, your chest come forward. Now, on the next exhalation, draw your navel up right behind the navel area, that prana body center. Breathe. Bring it up into the cat arch. Breathe in the cat arch and feel the space that you achieve between all the vertebrae from the cervical spine. Follow your vertebrae all the way down to the tailbone and feel the spaciousness that comes between all of them in this pose. Now, once again, inhale, exhale, drop, let your shoulder blades move towards each other, come into the back bend, cow. Couple more breaths here. Front body stretching out. Now exhale, draw the navel up, come back into cat. And we're going to hold this for a couple breaths, and then we'll move into a breathing rhythm to get things going and warmed up. So now, here we go. Inhale, exhale, come down into cow. Inhale, exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And then come back to neutral spine. From here, sit back and we're going to get rid of all your blankets to come into downward facing dog. No practice is complete without down dog, in my opinion. So you can move your blankets away for the moment and your props. Make some space for down dog on your mat. And then as you're ready, set yourself up. I prefer to come from my belly. So you can practice different ways of doing this, whether you want to come up from your belly or from Adho Mukha Vajrasana, downward facing thunderbolt. That's your choice. So you know this is the one way to come up. This is the way you were taught to come up from this pose as beginners. But as you become more intermediate students, it's a nice practice to come up from your belly. It's a nice way to measure. Thumbs at the nipple level, fingers spread together, like you're coming up into cobra pose, curling the toes under. And with an exhalation, lifting your hips up and coming up into down dog. Starting out with your knees slightly bent. You can alternately to open up the backs of the legs, which we haven't done yet really very much, at least not the muscular level. So you can walk the dog, lowering one heel, pump up, and then lower the alternate heel. Doing that a couple of times to help open up your calf muscles, the backs of the knees. Micro bend your elbows and be sure you're getting space across the shoulders, that they're not caving in. Your ears are between your upper arms. Do check that. Move your head back and forth to make sure that your neck is neutral. As you breathe into this, lift the navel up towards the spine, towards the sacrum, And feel all the organs hanging like clusters of grapes along the spine. Just enjoy that spaciousness and that feeling of the organs, your rib cage, all of those things hanging along the spine. Feel the fulcrum. Feel the equilibrium of where the tailbones are positioned is in the middle of the pose, right at the mid-body, right behind that central center between the upper and lower body. So breathing into the navel, raising the navel up to the spine, gets you to breathing into that prana body. So you can see and sense whether you're balanced in your upper body and lower body here. Now I'm just talking to keep you here in down dog for a little bit more time, but you can do a variation. Lift your right leg up to the height of your hip. Don't let the body shift over to the left-hand side as you do this, but look up between your hands and be sure that your weight is balanced between both hands. Lower the right leg down back to the floor and lift the left leg up to the height of your hip. And again, make sure the weight's not pitching to the right side of the body, to the right-handed foot, but that your balance is using the core muscles to keep your balance right between both hands. Lower the left foot down, come down to your knees and rest in child pose. Then come up to your knees and you're in table here. I want you to roll your toes under. So curl your toes under, stretching the soles of the feet. And then I want you to just push yourself back into your haunches and roll up into Malasana, garland pose. So let's practice our little squat position, balancing on the balls of the feet. Ideally, you would have a blanket underneath your heels. So if you've got a blanket nearby and you want to stabilize the pose, pull it under your heels, and that will help you to feel more stable. But there's a lot of virtue in just learning how to balance on the balls of your toes. Also, strengthening the feet, strengthening your balance. So either way, sit in this nice open knee position, pressing your outer elbows into your inner knees gently. Spread them wide by drawing the hands a little closer to the heart. That'll open up your knees and open up and get that rotation in the hips. And also, this is great for the back, the lower back. So you get a nice stretch in the lower back with this. If you want to place your fingers down to the floor to explore Malasana, you can creep your fingers forward and see if you can come a little bit more deeply in the forward bend position here. The other option is to take your arms and try to bend your elbows and try to grasp behind your ankles. This is the closer to the full garland pose. Not really, but it's closer. This is the direction you're going with garland. So this gives a nice spread across the shoulder blades, across the trapezius muscles. And that's just another variation. I'm just giving you variations. You can just happily sit in your squat otherwise. Now from here, let's rise up into Urdhva Hastasana, doing that springtime motion of blossoming upward from pretending we're a bulb in the ground. Inhale, exhale, press up and bring the arms up overhead. Urdhva Hastasana. And now from Urdhva Hastasana, come back down into your squat with control, the hands coming down the midline of the body and coming back into your Malasana position. I love this, I love this motion. So inhale, exhale, pressing up, standing back up, arms up overhead, Urdhva Hastasana. Your gaze is straight forward, but you're bringing the upper arms in towards the ears, stretch, extend, draw the navel back towards the spine. Don't let your belly jut forward. Inhale, exhale, bring the hands back together down into your squat. Come back down to Malasana. Inhale, last time. Exhale, come up to standing, Urdhva Hastasana, arms overhead. Let the arms move outward. I'm aware that I'm cut off on the screen. My arms move outward and blossoming, opening. Let the arms very slowly descend. Turn the palms down towards the floor. Let's hold this for a minute. It's always good. Lift your upper arm muscles to the bone. So this is a subtle direction. I want you to think about lifting up your bat wings towards the bone. Okay, and then drop the arms down to your side. Good. Next, we're going to move into a couple standing poses. So first, before we do that, it's always good to do a balancing pose. I'm going to I got to move the camera angle a little bit. Still have to get the floor. Here we go. So I always suggest doing at least one balancing pose in a practice. So today what we're going to do is, I like the two-footed balances are just as important as the one-footed balances, which become more challenging as we get older. But let's do archer pose. So let's face the length side of your mat, the length side of the mat. So you're somewhere like 2/3 back, so that when you step forward, you still have the mat in front of you. And from here, let's take your left foot forward and your right foot back. Square your hips. Take time to make sure that the weight is dropping evenly down between both feet as you steer your hips forward. Now bring the arms in front of you at shoulder height, palms pressed together. Make a fist of your right hand into your left palm. Inhale, exhale, draw the string of your bow back. Keep that back elbow up, keep it active. Inhale, the thumb is straight up, so that's going to be your focal point of your left arm. Inhale, and let's begin to pivot to the left. Turning, keep your eye on that thumb and keep turning to the left. Keep your focus very, very intense on that thumb. Hold and breathe. Find your quarry. Keep lifting up the right elbow. And now bring yourself back to center. Draw the hand back to the front. And now let's add the variation of looking up at the sky. So aim up at the sky. Lift your left arm up. Your right arm is still parallel on the same line, on the same axis. And look up at the sky. Come back down to center. Let your right hand come forward to meet your left, palms together. And then step forward with your feet together into mountain pose. Step back on your mat again to that same position for the other side. So now you're going to take your right foot forward on the mat. Your left foot is back. Take a moment. You're just taking one step, one stride step. Square the hips. Be sure the weight is dropping evenly down directly through the pelvic floor into the earth, that you're not leaning back in the back leg and you're not pitching forward in the front leg. Keep moving your hips, both hips forward, and manually with your hands. Sometimes it's nice to do this. Draw the right hip back, press the left hip forward. Big stretch in the back calf, there's no doubt. Now lift the arms up in front of you, palms together. Make a fist of your left hand in your right palm and draw the left arm back in the bow. So getting that tension. Your right thumb is straight up. That's your focal point, your drishti. Take a deep inhalation, and with an exhalation and pivoting from the navel, begin to pivot to the right. Being sure to keep that back elbow up. Keep your eye gazing over that thumb. Don't go so far that you lose your thumb. Keep the thumb in focus. You're only twisting insofar as you can keep your thumb in your focus. Breathing. Where's your quarry? Getting ready to let go of the arrow. Concentration, effort. Now come back to center. Arrow pointing forward. Inhale, and with an exhalation, lift the hand up and aim up at the sky. Still gazing at that thumb. Your gaze has not left that thumb, your right thumb. Now drop the hand back down to level. Let your left hand extend to meet your right, palms together. And then step forward, hands by your side, Tadasana, mountain pose. Take a couple breaths in mountain pose. Let's just absorb the effects of that balancing and twisting. And feeling the body awakening as we move into a more active practice. So from here, let's move into triangle pose. So take your two blocks, position them right and left, the back of your mat. Coming into Tadasana. Nice grounded Tadasana. Lift all 10 toes off the floor. Stretch the toes forward and ground them into the mat. You really feel the entire surface of your feet, lifting the inner ankles up, zipping up the midline. Draw the navel back towards the sacrum once more. Make a nice firm abdominal area here so the lower ribs are related to the navel. There's a soft crease in the front of the legs so you're not hyperextending in your hips. Shoulder blades are comfortably hugging into the back body. Take the palms of the hands forward. The eyes of the elbows are forward. And then turn just the hands back towards the thighs, keeping the upper arms rotating outward. Gaze is soft, throat is soft, the eyes gazing out and softening as they expand to take in the entire horizon. Now with an inhalation, with your hands in front of your chest, step or jump your feet wide, a leg to a leg and a half length apart, as wide as you can manage and stay balanced. And then turn your right foot in, your left foot out to come into your first position. Now, drop your hands and take one hand to actually take your right hand to your belly, your left hand to your sacrum, and turn your navel to face me on the screen. So turn everything to face forward. You're going to feel the asymmetry in the hip joints, the inward rotation of the back leg, the outward rotation of this, and the body is all on one plane. Now extend the arms straight out again. Inhale, and with an exhalation, your block should be somewhere near the ankle. Come down, take your block, hand to the block, and come into your triangle pose. Taking the block at whatever height you would like. You might want to experiment with that. Every day is different. Sometimes a high height is best for getting space. Think about getting space in the underside of the body of the left rib cage as the right ribs pivot up towards the ceiling. Again, draw the navel back to the spine and begin initiating the twist of the upper body right down there in the lower part of the body first, the navel. That's where it initiates, not with your arm moving around. So you're working on rotating. Draw the tips of the shoulder blades towards each other. The bottom tips of the shoulder blades. That will help you with activating the upper core, the upper girdle. The shoulder girdle is rotating in the opposite direction of the hips. This is definitely a twist involved in this pose. Strengthen both legs. Be sure that they're both perfectly straight. Press into the big toe mound and outer edge of the back foot. Press into the big toe mound and outer edge out of your right foot. And then let's transition into Parsvakonasana because you're intermediate students. So bend your right knee. And I want the block to be, your elbow to be right behind your left knee. So your left knee should be pressing into your left inner elbow. And now extend the upper arm up and over into Parsvakonasana. Extended side stretch, looking in towards the elbow or the armpit. Stretch the back of the neck long, turning your gaze and twisting the head. The palm is hovering straight over. There should be one big long straight line from the top pinky of your hand, your raised pinky, all the way down to the outer rim of the back foot. Let's transition back to triangle now by straightening the front leg and lift your arm straight up, just transitioning straight back to triangle. Couple of breaths here. Breathe deeply. Now, pressing into both feet, lift up with an inhalation and turn your hips, your feet forward, the toes to point forward. Take your hands to rest on your hips for a moment between sides. This will be your resting between sides. Nice long breaths. Just let them return to the normal cadence. And then pivot out your right foot and turn your left foot in to come to the other side. But before you do that, extend the arms straight at shoulder height. But then I want you to drop your left hand to your belly, your right hand to your sacrum, and pivot. Turn your hips, your heart, your chest, your belly, everything to face forward. So you are pivoting everything. Draw that left elbow back and turn the belly to forward. You'll feel the intensity building in the pelvic girdle and where the legs are resting, the top of the femur bone coming into the hip joint sockets. Now extend the arms straight out. Inhale, and with an exhalation, reach with full extension. Keep reaching out, out, out. And hopefully your hand will come to rest on the block nearby. Take it behind your ankle and come into your triangle pose on the second side. You can work with your block, adjusting the height as you wish, maybe down, maybe up. Do use the block though. It's, a lot of classes you'll find they don't use a block. You're just resting on your ankle, your hand on your ankle. I only do that in the case where I don't have the block around and I forgot it or something. But I like the alignment that you can make with the arms and the steadiness that you can feel. It's a little bit more steady for the pose. Press into the big toe mound of your foot, your front foot. Rotate, feel the inner leg activating. Press into the outer rim of your back foot and lift the inner ankle bone of the back foot up. So now bring your awareness back to the left femur head where it inserts into your hip. I want you to see if you can relax your buttocks muscles. Just relax the buttocks and let that thigh bone slide in a little bit more deeply. This helps to relax the pose. And as your intermediates, you have to hold this pose longer. Now, to come into Parsvakonasana, I want you to bend your front knee and notice that the knee will arrive right in front of the elbow. And you can place your hand on the block so that you can press the knee right into that elbow. So you're pressing outward into the elbow with your knee, and that is going to help you rotate your chest to the ceiling. And then you're going to add the extension of the upper arm, gazing into the armpit or the upper inner elbow. Now, keep moving deeply into the lunge here. Keep pressing your right knee into your right elbow, and that will help you to rotate, drawing your shoulder blades towards each other, rotating the upper body into the twist. Strong pose. Nice straight line of the hand, the palm, upper palm hovering over the floor, all the way down, a nice straight line, all the way down to your back left foot. And now come back into triangle by straightening your front leg, transition back to triangle pose. Nice cross beam there. Couple of breaths here. Regroup your legs, make them nice and straight. Lifting up towards the inner thighs of both legs, towards the fulcrum where they meet in the pelvic girdle. Now, pressing into your hand on the block, inhale, leaning into your back leg, come up and turn your feet to the center and step or jump your feet back to Tadasana, mountain pose. Take a breath here, regroup, realign your feet, make sure everything is centered and lined up. Crown of the head is over the pelvic floor, everything is perfectly aligned. With training, the body always returns to this perfect position. All right. Next pose is Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. So with an inhalation, bring your hands in front of your chest. And with an exhalation, step your feet wide, just one length apart. So a narrower stance. And then let's turn the left foot out, the right foot in. And take your hands to your hips. And you're going to turn both hips forward. So pressing the right hip forward and drawing the left hip back. Square the hips forward. From here, we're going to prepare to come into Warrior 1. So in order to do that, I want you to bend your front knee. Now, when you bend your front knee, you might need to creep the toes forward. Be sure that you can see your left big toe over the kneecap of your foot. You can glimpse it. That will make sure you have the right angle, and you haven't overbent. You haven't gone over your ankle with your knee, which is, as you know, crucial. Now, lift the arms out to the side. Turn the palms to face up and lift the arms up overhead. You can either do a grip with both hands together or keep the hands apart. Gaze, I want you to keep the gaze steady forward. Your drishti straight ahead. I'm not going to add the back bend in the upper body, but you can always, if you're feeling steady, you can lift your eyes and look up towards the ceiling. So I'm not going to add that today. This is going to stay fundamental. We're going to just keep the eyes gazing forward. Although the classic pose is more of a back bend and you are looking up towards the ceiling. Now, straighten the front leg. And with your arms outstretched at the side, still at shoulder height, turn your feet to the center. Keep your arms active and straight out to the side. Turn your feet to the second side. Square your hips forward. We're going to try to keep the arms up. That keeps the pose more active. Turn the palms up. Bend your front knee. Check before you lift the arms that you're getting a sight line of your big toe, your right big toe, over the front knee. That ensures that you stay in that right angle and you're not going over the ankle. Inhale, exhale, bring the arms straight up overhead. You can either bring the palms together and link your thumbs around each other or keep your hands apart, which is a little more challenging. Keep the gaze straight forward until you really feel centered on your feet. And if you'd like to take a couple of breaths with your gaze looking up at the ceiling, you may. That's the classic pose. But don't feel you must. So gaze forward or gaze up. That's your choice. Keep breathing. Powerful pose. Now straighten the front leg. Turn your feet to the center. Come into that star-like pose. And step or jump your feet back to Tadasana, mountain pose. Nice and strong. Breathing. Another basic standing pose. Here we go. Parsvatonasana. And it's the same foot position as Warrior 1. So with an inhalation, bring your hands together in front of your chest. Exhalation, take that one leg length apart. Turn to the first side. Left foot out, right foot in. Take your hands to your hips for the first bit here. Then I want you to roll your shoulders back. And can you clasp your opposite elbows behind you at the kidneys? So that's one option. Another option is reverse prayer with your fingers pointing down. And the final, more advanced option is to do prayer mudra. I'm not sure I can do it. Behind your back, bringing the palms together. Lift, and the point is of this is just keep lifting up the front of the shoulder heads, and then with a straight back, with your eyes casting down the wall, coming into a forward bend from the hips, bending over, both legs are perfectly straight, coming over into a forward bend. Now, I don't believe you have to keep your legs perfectly straight the whole time. I like to micro bend my front knee because I don't want to overstretch my hamstrings. And I like this. I can get deeper in the forward bend. So you can try micro bending the front knee. That takes a lot of ease out of the hamstrings. But keep your chest up and open. And then let your gaze drop down to the big toe. And then let the gaze drop down towards your ankle. And let your upper body descend towards the standing leg. Breathing. Now to come out of the pose, let the gaze lift up, look at the baseboard, let your eyes draw like a compass point up the wall. As you lift yourself up back to vertical, the gaze goes up above your head to the ceiling, and then lower your head, turn your feet to the center, and stay there, turn to the second side. So your hands should still be in position, holding your opposite elbows, or prayer mudra like so, with your fingers pointing down. One of those two, or the most advanced prayer mudra with your fingers facing up towards your shoulder blades. Whichever position you've chosen, firm your legs. Your toes are all pointing forward. Lift the chest, press into your kidneys, look up towards the ceiling, and then initiate your forward bend. Beginning to look out, straight ahead, down the wall, draw a line with a pencil. With your eyes, draw the line down to the baseboard, down to the floor, and then draw the gaze of your point to the big toe. You can micro bend that front leg. Again, I must do that to not overextend my hamstrings, which are not happy. So be mindful of where your body is. So coming forward slowly, drop the gaze. You should feel calm and serene, the breath coming nice and slow. Moving into a forward bend, which is a cooling pose. This is a strengthening and cooling pose, so I love it. Parsvatanasana is a great one, especially as it gets warmer. Now, coming out, lift your gaze to the baseboard. Draw the line back up the wall as you're beginning to come back to vertical, gazing up at the ceiling above you, and then drop your gaze to center. Release your arms, turn your feet to the center, and step or jump your feet back to Tadasana. Let's take Prasarita Padottanasana as a final standing posture. So you're going to take your blocks and bring them forward, and you're standing as you were for the other standing poses. Take your feet wide, turn your toes slightly in, your outer heel slightly outside of the little toe side of your foot. Be sure your feet are equidistant from the front of your mat. Make sure your positioning is precise. Your blocks are right in front of you, at shoulder width apart on their highest height. Take your hands into your hip crease, roll the shoulders back, lengthen the front body, hinging at the hips, and come forward and take your hands to the blocks at their highest height. below the shoulders. Look up and out. So you're cultivating a straight back. And perhaps you could balance a teacup right here on the concave lower spine. That is what you're trying to achieve. So nice straight back. Front body is nice and long. Now take the blocks down to the second height. Hands resting on them firmly below, right at shoulder width. Inhale, look up and out again. Slightly lower for the upper body. Nice long breath. Release. And then take the blocks down to the lowest height that you have. Place the palms on them. Check your legs. Make sure they're still in position. They're still straight. The knees are straight. And your kneecaps are lifted. Look straight up and out. Get that teacup positioned on your sacrum. And then coming into the full forward bend here, you're to take your blocks and you can either stack them however you like to place the crown of your head on the blocks. You might experiment with the height. Your hands are going to be on either side of the block. And your elbows, if you bend them, they're going to be pointing towards the wall behind you. It's also handy to hook your thumbs around the corners of the block at shoulder width to make sure you've got that nice positioning. And now you're going to stay here and breathe. Try to keep calm. Try to stay still. The tendency is to get a little bit restless and twitchy as you hold this pose. So trying to hold it still. Find a gaze point on the wall ahead of you or somewhere. Hold that spot. Keep your gaze fixed to it. And breathe. Nice long breaths. All right, let's begin to come out of this. Lift up your head, hands to the blocks, lowest height. Equaling the blood flow, look up and out. With that flat back, take the blocks to the next height up. It's important to let the blood flow in the brain return before you come straight up. And then take the blocks to their highest height, looking up and out. And now that they're at their highest height, you can take your hands into your hip crease with a straight back and an exhalation. Return to standing and then heel toe your feet back together, coming back to Tadasana, your final mountain pose of the day. Observing the breath returning to its normal cadence. Just observe the breath. Notice the sensations. Absorb the feelings of the feelings that the posture is generated in the body. Draw that energy back into yourself. And then let's relax. So let's come into, I'm just going to give you one lying recline twist. And what you should do, if you have time, we don't, for the sake of brevity, we're not going to do this. This is we're going to move into, you would move into shoulder stand. Or let's do it though. I'm going to go ahead and put it on this tape, on this recording. So starting on your back, and I want you to have your two blocks handy because we're going to use those as an alternative to shoulder stand. Knowing that understanding that you could do shoulder stand if you wish instead of Vibrita Karani. But we're just going to do our quick and dirty Vibrita Karani here to end our practice today. So first, with your feet on the floor, your knees bent, I want you to take your arms as a cross beam up and place the palms down. And then I want you to let your legs drop to the left for a spinal twist to the left. Just a nice final little twist to return the spine to neutral. Not that we did any back bends, but not but the standing poses. We just want the body to return to a state of feeling the gravity of lying on the floor in its entirety. And then draw your knees back up to center, drop the knees over to the right hand side, twisting to the left. And just feel and breathe into the twist and then just enjoy this. You can't have enough twists in a practice, in my opinion. The twists are really a great way to keep your spine supple, to keep your spine alive and from getting rickety. And even if you have, as I do, a lot of rickety vertebrae there, doing twists and moving your spinal column in various positions really helps keep the creakiness at bay. Now bring the knees back up, feet to the floor. Draw your knees into your chest and hug your nose up to your knees. Inhale, exhale, squeeze yourself into a little ball and release. Feet to the floor. Now take your blocks that you have handy and you're going to place them. I like to make a nice broad platform. So whatever height you like, press the blocks together, lift up your sacrum and place your sacrum comfortably on the blocks, making sure that you feel well balanced on there before you move into position. Then draw your knees up towards your chest and straighten the legs straight up to the ceiling. Palms are up in Shavasana-like position, about 20 degrees away from the body. Your shoulder blades are flat on the floor. I hope your head is cushioned on a pillow blanket. It should be. You don't want your head on the floor, not on a hard surface. A mat is okay, but not a hard surface. So coming into your Vibrita Karani, this will be our inversion for the day. And you can always do shoulder stand in this space of time. As a rule of thumb, it's good to hold a position like this or shoulder stand, if you can, for about 20 to 25 breaths. If you want to know, what's a good length of time. I like to go for 20 to 25 breaths. That always seems to be quite enough. And if you go over that, that's fine too. And if you're under that, that's good. I'm just giving you a guideline for how long we usually stay in these poses. Another good way to judge the length is to see when your toes begin to look a little bit more pale. The blood is drained out of your feet towards your heart. That's another good way. If they feel a little bit cool, a little bit tingly, that's probably long enough. So let's now bend the knees, drop your feet to the floor, lift your hips, take the blocks out, and you're going to set up for your final pose, Shavasana, corpse pose. Get yourself comfortable, and I'll do a seated I'll be seated and I will give a verbal walkthrough of Shavasana. Making sure you're comfortably positioned, flat on the floor, with your head supported, maybe your neck supported with a little roll of the blanket is probably preferable for those who are older, rather than just having your body flat on the floor. A little pillow blanket goes a long way. Get yourself comfortable and covered up. Here's your body temperature drops. And now, as you're lying in your initial Shavasana, check to see that your shoulder blades are nice and flat upon the floor, that your arms are comfortably away from the body, not touching anything. Make sure there's no objects or props around you. The palms face the ceiling, the knuckle of your middle finger touching the floor, and the fingers gently curled. Bring your awareness down to the legs, feeling the weight of the thigh bones. Feel the muscles soften and drop away from the thigh bones as the muscles and bones of your legs melt and descend towards the floor. Let your awareness and your inner gaze rise up towards the back rib cage. Feel the lower floating ribs, the lowest ribs of the rib cage, softening and descending into the earth and gently floating away from the central spinal column. Run your gaze up the rib cage. Feel all of the ribs soften and move away from the spine as the entire back body sinks more deeply into the earth. Your arms are feeling very heavy upon the floor. Softening your throat. Release the lower hinge of your jaw and let the teeth part slightly as the tongue descends into the root of the mouth. The upper palate rising as your inner gaze draws up through to the backs of the eyeballs. Feel the eyeballs shrinking in their sockets and descending back. Feel the brain shrinking back from the front of the skull cap. Feel it drop backwards into the back of the brain. The back brain dropping into the back skull cap. As the eyes drop back and the skin drapes upon the face, feel the ear canals softening and widening. As you listen to the breath, notice the sound of the breath internally as the hearing moves downward and inward into the back of the brain. Observe the sound of the breath as it moves gently in and out of form. You do nothing to affect the breath whatsoever. You are cultivating the inner observer, the inner witness. Scan the body once more to see if you notice any currents of energy. What do they feel like? Right below the skin, do you feel currents of warmth, tingling? It might feel like a gentle buzzing, slightly electrical, slightly magnetic, And then let go of all observations and descend into peace. Stay in Shavasana as long as you wish. You have all the time in the world.